y'all are doing well. Pretty late at night. Let's just do kind of just another quick recap. Go over the market, what kind of happened today, and what we're looking for. Um, be honest, I know when you're looking at RSI and other things, kind of what like bullish divergence is, but and maybe I feel like I see bullish to almost divergence in a sense without looking at that. I'm not sure if we're seeing something like that. I wouldn't be surprised actually. I don't use RSI. Um, But we'll kind of see what I'm talking about in a little bit and why today seemed kind of weird. And it seemed like we're on the edge. But at the end of the day, a lot of the things in the market and the indices are doing pretty well. So if anyone wants, you can always check this. We're kind of today and if you want to kind of see how I think about things, you can always check the stream. I always go through it, every kind of thought that I'm thinking on something and how I get to it. So anyway, kind of where we ended from here, let's just pick off from yesterday. We'll go here. Whoops. Yep. We'll go here. We'll go to Apple. So essentially where we were from yesterday, let's kind of go into all this so it doesn't look as ugly and as kind of crazy. Let's go here. Let's bring the fib back. Just make it look a little nicer. Talking about the ranges, we can get rid of this for now. Okay, so what we do in the morning, or where we left off pretty much, is I don't know what Chairman Powell was thinking. But yesterday we have this. Obviously, we had the trend. They failed here. We could see on the 15, like we saw yesterday. Boom, they needed to keep it down here, looking for the 4-hour end under 154. And I think that would have been pretty decent to push us down, possibly. But what we really have is we can't hit there. We see around 130. We're pretty much in this area. We started between, so it makes more sense for us to go up at this point than kind of go down. So it trends up. All we really needed to do, in my opinion, was start up here for yesterday, or I'm sorry, today, and I think we would have pushed up. So interesting enough, Chancellor Chairman Powell himself wanted to say something in the beginning of the market. I don't know why. So we ended up starting right here. So we pretty much start right on the trend line itself. So obviously, when we start right on the trend line, I don't know why people sold it down. I don't in the first 15 minutes. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But then we got pushed up. So it makes sense that we're going to push up to here. But the issue comes if we're looking for a 4-hour change, because we have this 4 hours a reasonable time frame. That's what I look for also. But at the same time, we do have the 4-hour right here, which will kind of come into some of this stuff where we bounced. We'll see in a second. So we wanted to see it end up here. But the issue is we get here. But when we look at the time that we actually reach here, it's about 10:45, 11 o'clock. So we're looking for a 4-hour change up here, and it's 11 o'clock. So we're looking for another 2.5 hours. So we pretty much have to stay up here for 2.5 hours. So, I mean, I remember even saying exactly at this point, like, it's not a time to be long on this whatsoever at all. Not because it looks bad, but because we have another 2.5 hours to be up here. So if this is our range of like what can happen, saying under here is bad, essentially ending it under like 154, we're at the top of the range. So are we really going to sit here for another 2.5 hours? So it seems pretty unlikely. So obviously we push down. Pushing down this much, we can kind of see on the shorter terms why, but it still was a very aggressive, a very aggressive push down, as we can see. So I thought it was going to go down, but I certainly didn't think it would go away job update. But I certainly didn't think it would go down this much, which was a little bit surprising. So we can see the 15s here, but a little bit more interesting with what we have is I wasn't too worried about this. What I wanted to see is we'll kind of look at this trend line here. Let's just kind of show a little bit of its personality, or like where it is. Let's get rid of some of these so it's not as ugly. Okay, so we can pretty much see it's a decent average cutting through these, right? Cut through, cut through, cut through. I haven't moved this in months, so. And so really I wanted to see something end under, but the thing is, we also had this. So interestingly enough, we actually bought up here for about 30 minutes to an hour and then pushed down. So I thought it was pretty sketchy and more likely to push down. But what I wanted to see here really at the end was another 4-hour end under here, or specifically, because that would have been the end of the day, or specifically really any short-term resistance. So I expected a possible bounce here because we have the line here. And another thing is we did hit it here, but a key thing is we didn't hit it exactly. And because we came through, it does give us a chance for like if we have any kind of level of support, we can think of in a sense. If we hit through under, it does make sense that we could do something like this, and it does create a sort of a trend right there. And it just in a sense of a lower high creates a lower high, which is also pretty nice. So a lot of fighting here, a lot of fighting on a pretty big uptrend, considering where we are. We're still not where I want to see anything, which is essentially the targets that I'm looking for tomorrow, which hopefully will start in an obvious target which would be up here again on Appl above 155. And just to kind of reiterate again, I use Appl to determine a lot of the direction of stuff. And it kind of makes sense, especially when we look at like the 15-minute where I'm saying we want to see it. And then when we go over to look at Nasdaq, boom, it was like a complete dump. So not that every way that the Appl goes, it moves something percentage wise, but a lot of times it is an easy way to determine the direction of the overall market. So, and then we'll kind of get to like the bullish divergence that I've been seeing. So, and a couple interesting things that made me not really feel super short or super uneasy about entering a short. Besides Appl, constantly looking over at Nasdaq, we can see some of the positions here, and so we can see over on the day, the Nasdaq actually started in somewhat of a sketchy position. I would have liked to seen it start a little bit higher than what it did. It's not a huge deal, like it's technically under, so it's not a huge deal to me that it's really right here. But let me see, what was I going to say real quick? But it just seemed really strong. So when Appl, let me see if I can bring this here. Let's do this. So when Appl actually was pushing down at these lows, the indices were in a pretty decent spot, and that was a little bit surprising for a lot of this. So when we were really down here, we can see, let me do this on the 1 hour, and we can see over on even like the Nasdaq, right? We're still fighting right around these areas in a pretty decent place. So we push down here. This is to be expected because we pushed down super hard. But this is the 4 hour, I'm sorry, this is the 4 hour switch right here, which is like really sketchy. We spent a lot of time, we can't see it here, I don't want to go all the way into it, but if we check this time period, we'll see that it actually pushes up quite a bit and then comes down a touch. But if we look over on Nasdaq, it's back above the day over here, right? So from here, it just takes the chance to push back up, and so it's back above this for a decent amount, and then we end here. So this was somewhat interesting. SPXU is also a little bit interesting too. This is a bear inverse 3x ETF, or not bear inverse, but it's a bear ETF for the SPY. And this was also another interesting thing because this also was looking pretty bad for what it was. So a lot of these things that usually line up weren't. So I really feel like we're probably going to push up. I think we're going to explode upwards. We'll have to see, but that's the feeling I'm getting because some of the stuff's so bad. So we can try to check the SPY and see where this is in a sense, and we can see that we have the day candle here. So an interesting thing on the SPY, I think, which will be maybe we'll have to see what kind of happens for it. I still think the Nasdaq's going to be one of the biggest gainers, but an interesting thing that's nice about the SPY as opposed to the Nasdaq's up here in regards to its day hole with no actual confirmation. Technically, it didn't end above or start above. Today it technically started under. So I do like this about the S&P that it could drop a little bit, and then this is essentially our range all the way up to 410. So this looks pretty nice here. It could fight and beat here and get up here. So at total we have, I think it's like 4%, like 2.8 all the way up to like 4.2% that we could get from the SPY. I think it's more like 3% that we could possibly get tomorrow. I think is a little bit more likely with this. I'm looking to see where stuff ends. Tragically, if Appl ends under, we'll see, like if Appl starts here, sorry, not ends, but if it starts down here, we should, it's about, I can't remember where it is from now. I think it might be 0.6%. It's somewhere, it's the same relative distance from here. So it's like 0.5% more or less. So if those both start down, I would, one of the things I'm looking for to see if it seems better to short or long would be to SPY to end under the day hull that we're going to have tomorrow when it moves down. And Appl also is something to see as well. To really get direction from this, it's a little bit sketchy. I still would have preferred to seen this come down. Where it looks like with SPY coming down a little bit, possibly in the morning, I think it's a lot more likely that what will happen is if we start here in this area, we'll push down, we'll come right to this area, and then we'll continue to push up. This is what I think is the most likely if we see a scenario like that. The Dow's kind of the Dow. I don't remember what the Dow's doing. So we have the daytime here on the Dow. So I think really at the end of the day, the Dow or the DIA or like the ETF or anything it's really just going to have to get support, or it's a lot of it's just going to get pushed up from what are we talking about? From like Appl, Nasdaq, other big indicators kind of moving the market in that direction. I don't see a big reason for the Dow, not specific things on the Dow itself, but just the Dow, the indice overall to super push up. And it doesn't mean it's not going to push up. I just don't think it's going to push up as much. As we can see, we have this 4 hour bounce right here, or like 4 hour confirmation, looks really beautiful. But when we go here, we only have so much before the day. We can see here, boom, boom. So it's a pretty decent line. Even if we don't want to, even if it was any line other than this double whole average, still looks like a decent line. But for here, for this next move up, we'd like to see confirmation. So I don't think this is going to get stopped here. I think this can push up. And I think if we do have something bullish tomorrow, we could see something like the SPY ending, where like the Dow ending like the SPY did today, where we push through, and then the next day maybe, or next week maybe, we can get confirmation on the second push up, which would be pretty nice. So those are kind of like the bullish expectations I'm looking for, assuming that we start in those positions. And then I think that's kind of like the core of it with that. Oh, what I can show also is, so the VIX starts at the VIX start sorry, so something in the background. Anyway, so the VIX, let me bring this up. Do it like this. So just to kind of reiterate with the VIX, we have the month time frame. So we got the month time frame. Let's do this. So month time frame bounce we can see is pretty decent. Most of the hard bouncing though really comes from when we come down to this line. So this could be a possibility also as well. Excuse me. So if we're looking at this, I mean, it could be somewhere like October, November, December, maybe somewhere later in this year. I'm not saying it's for sure. I'm just saying if that was to be a possibility. So if everything's going to go to the moon, we're going to see a month end under here. It seems pretty unlikely because we haven't had anything like that happen for the last 5 years, or I guess 3 years. It depends when you want to say this kind of formed. I think it's better to say it formed here, right? This kind of existed, more so existed here. After 3 years, it looked a lot better. So a couple things looking at this. So we have the week time frame here. We got the month time frame, week time frame. Same thing as always. Then we have the day. So we can see, boom, looks pretty nice. Obviously, we start. Well, technically, I mean, this is a pretty decent start. The only big thing about this is it's pretty onerous. After having a nice candle like this, especially with like a Dragonfly Doji or whatever, a little bit weird to see it red, but we really have to push up on this. This isn't something that we can push back down on. But regardless, we see that we push up. There's a decent amount of, there's a decent average at this line. But the interesting thing is we have the weeks under us. Can't really start any of these. We start way too high, come down to test. And this is something we'll see in a second too on one of the days. And then we start in betweens, which is, it's not horrible, but it's definitely not good. To wanting to see confirmation that started above both. So we can see this was the Monday, I believe. I think August 29th. Yeah, this was the Monday. So we can see we started here all the way up here, and we just pushed up. And then right when about the market opened, it was summer here. So it makes sense kind of for things, I think, for things to come up or whatever they're doing on that day. And then we can just see pretty much hitting, right? And so boom, boom. After a certain period of time, we got to ask ourselves, when are we going to not hit? So for a bearish situation, I'd be interested to see what happens with the VIX tomorrow, because we are back down to this day. And like I was saying with something else before, we do have this and then a higher low if this does want to maintain. So I think for a bearish scenario, this would be the best kind of case. It looks so bad though up here. It really kind of me begets the question, where do we really expect to go? Maybe back up to 2461. Even that seems unlikely. But if we start under here tomorrow, this would also be another thing to look for something very straightforward bullish, I feel like, because with all this topside action, we could see like shoulder. We could treat this as a head. So what, shoulder here maybe? This seems a little bit more likely, and then coming back down possibly. I could see something like that, but regardless, it looks like it does give us somewhere in this range if we want to assume it's going to be a higher shoulder. And that's still about from what, 23, like 60 more or less to, I'm not going to do that. Let's just do this. And that itself is still going to be about 4%, which is quite a bit for the market to move in a direction. And I think it has a high chance to continue to move in that direction. For this to start under the day, it's going to be pretty bullish for a lot of stuff. So that's kind of also another like bullish scenario that like another thing to add to the bullishness. So when we get to USDWTI, I'm not going to go over this too much because I went over it yesterday. It doesn't look like there's anything really too decent. I still think we're going to get wrecked here. If we find support above it, then okay. I actually don't hate it if we find support above it. I just don't really like it because of what I said before. We have the month time frame right here. Like, we're pushing down. We have such strong support here. I can kind of see why people are buying it because it's coming so close to these areas. So maybe they just want to buy it early. I don't agree with that. I don't think it makes sense. Let it hit support lines. So, we have this here, fib, boom. And then the week just has a lot of strong resistance too. So even if this is down here, it's still, to me, pretty strong here because it gives more of a reason, because it says, okay, if we do fail here, there's a decent chance we'll bounce and at least come back, and then we can take a no loss trade, which to me makes a lot of sense, especially when you're dealing with a lot of money. No loss trades, I think, are some of the most important things. So let's go to what else can we kind of look at? I think we covered a lot of them. Bitcoin, I think, is a little bit interesting. Bitcoin's still a little bit sketchy. Not going to go over everything because I do it every single time. Um, and I have like ideas for it and all that. They're super old, so we can always check that. So with Bitcoin, we really haven't done anything that bad. Okay, let me not say that. Okay, so kind of the issue here with the Bitcoin is if we want to be short, we're looking for this. We're looking for it to fall under the average and then expecting it to fall like even farther. We don't fall here under it, or we don't end and start under. We don't end and start under. We don't end and start. So every time it gets close to this line, no one wants to short it, which makes perfect sense to me. I understand that no one wants to short it because who the heck wants to push something all the way down? Nobody. Not if they don't have to. So it makes sense that we're going to push up somewhere around here, or we're going to have more bullish pressure. Makes sense, more bullish pressure. Makes sense, more bullish pressure. So this actually looks pretty nice. My one kind of concern about this with Bitcoin right now, and what we'll have to see happen is really we have this day candle. So I would expect if we do have a bullish start tomorrow, I would expect this to just pop all the way up and hopefully have enough time and I can get to Ethereum too, because I actually think that'll be pretty decent also as well. So we can see that this 20,800 is a pretty strong line. It's one of the lines I used from the beginning. It's not one of the weak channel hits, but I still think it's a fairly strong line, and we can even just see, I had it a long time ago, somewhere like over here, but it's just always turned out to be pretty well. So if we actually pushed up there yesterday, we would hit this. It is nice. I think it's a little bit better now because we do hit this before we hit this. So people have slightly two different targets in a sense, and it'll change also the next day too. So it's kind of like everyone's going to sell here, but maybe people will wait a little bit longer, and that's why I think it's slightly better. I still don't like it at the end of the day. Now to see something like push up through this, we'll see what happens. If it can do something here, we might come back up and be able to actually strike somewhere up in here and strike this downwards trend line. It's going to be quite a bit of a fight. I'm not really sure completely how to quantify this because these whole averages are strong, but these weak channel bottom are like each of these hits when it first hit. That's what each of these lines is for. Each of these lines represents. Those are also really strong too. And then this is also a really strong trend line. At the end of the day, I think Bitcoin's only really strong if it's over 30, if it's about 29, 30K in October. So I still think it has a lot going against it. And also just to kind of say in a sense, I think it's very possible a lot of stuff that we push up and still get knocked back down. So that's also kind of something there as well. I think it's incredibly possible. This Nasdaq's a perfect example that we can push up and hit here. Still, whoops, I don't know what I clicked off, but oh, let's get rid of that. But we have this lower high, and then we can easily maintain a lower high and just push this back down. So it's going to be a little bit tough, but I could easily see, even if this gets pushed up, how it could get pushed back down. And that makes me feel a little bit better about it going up. Because if it doesn't mean as much, I think bulls would be a little bit more willing to allow it. Also, no bear are bears. No bear cares here about the price necessarily coming back. No bear that entered here necessarily cares about the price coming back. These people have had more than enough time to do whatever they want here and get out of their position or reposition in any way that they want. So I don't really think this is too much of an issue. This is, to me, this is like the last stop where most people, like myself included, I'm not like some millionaire or anything, people with less money are going to kind of be trying to take advantage of like the last thing before we drop off. So let's kind of go to Ethereum, and I'll end with this because I don't have a lot of time. Oh, let me go to BNB real quick because I think this is interesting too. So actually for BNB, what I'm looking for on this one is a start on the 12-hour. We'll see tomorrow at 8 o'clock, but I'd be interested to see a start at 12-hour above 25.8. And then I easily think we can gain this area. So if we can just come up here and end, that'd be interesting. So I'm looking kind of out for that, and we'll kind of see what happens. I might sneeze. We'll see what happens kind of with that. But also in a sense, I think Ethereum looks pretty decent too. It's always something to look out for also as well. I think it's pretty nice because this is the thing I'll end on is what we had the other day is we had our head and shoulders with two shoulders on the left, two shoulders on the right. But the interesting thing is we had this on the left and we actually beat this on the right now. So there is a sort of invalidation, at least here, not here yet, but there is a sort of invalidation here, which could have this continue upwards, which brings that possibility of it continuing upwards, which I really do like. Oh, excuse me. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I try to pack as much as I can in there. That's pretty much the gist of what I'm looking at. Most other cryptos, other things can just be traded off of this as long as we know it looked good to Bitcoin and we see these bullish or bearish where the stock market opens and starts, we'll be fine. So, all right. That's pretty much it. And Yeah. Yeah. Take care, guys. Have a good day.